Can the Saints be title contenders with Derek Carr? Ooh, I can't wait to watch this. Our boys T-Bob and Jacob Hester at Off the Bench Overtime, ESPN 104.5. Let's not waste any time. I'm sure if you've been watching my videos, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Let's let them have the floor before I pop off.
No, right? Like I don't think Derek Carr is going to win a Super Bowl.
Okay, we're in agreement in the video. 16 seconds in, what's there left to talk about? I mean, I was actually expecting them to kind of make the case that Carr would make you a contender. So this is taking a turn. I feel like I'm watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
But I do question, does every decision need to be made through a Super Bowl or bust lens? And you may say,
great point. Kind of a different video for a different day topic. But I do think that's important. Fans, aka Twitter, they're way too like results oriented, way too, Super Bowl or bust oriented, NBA finals or bust oriented. They're way too singularly focused on that. And even when it comes to talking about players like legacy and stuff, it is so hard to win a Super Bowl. It is so hard to even get to a Super Bowl. There's a lot of times the best team in the NFL does not win the Super Bowl. Right? There's a lot of times the best player in the NFL doesn't win the MVP. Things just happen. Narratives get involved. A lot of variables. I think the better way to look at decisions are do these decisions make you a contender, make you in the conversation, make you relevant? Less of like, can we do something versus are we in the small bubble of teams that could possibly like be in the conversation? I'm like the years that the Saints didn't win the Super Bowl or didn't even go to the Super Bowl, those teams were incredible. There's nothing bad you can say about those teams. And just because they didn't get to the Super Bowl doesn't make the decisions that led up to that any worse or any better.
Well, yeah, obviously, T-Bob, that's the goal. And that's fine. And I feel what you're saying. But that will lead to some lean years. That's going to lead to a more long-term view that is not necessarily going to be, hey, let's be as good as we can every year, but hey, let's try to plan for the future. And it's not a guarantee that it's going to work out. You can try to plan for the future and you can end up stuck forever, like we've seen on NFL franchises, across the league.
Lean years, for sure. Lean years are definitely something that teams will have. They'll have down years. They'll have rebuilding years. And the front office of certain teams are much better at this. Like the Eagles. The Eagles had a rebuilding session right after, the Doug Peterson got fired and they kind of shifted things and, they brought in new players, new coaches. They rebuilt all over the field. They exploded with Jalen Hurts. Boom. 5 years ago, I think the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I'm pulling all these numbers out of my head. I'm pretty sure it was a 5-year stretch where the Eagles won a Super Bowl and then rebuilt, and now they're back, right? Some teams, some front offices are bad, like the Texans. I always pick on the Texans, but they're a loser franchise. The Texans are a bad front office. Everyone knows that. They just kind of flounder in nothingness. They're never really competitive. They're never really relevant. They don't seem to make good moves. And so that's like the difference in those lean years. The Saints, we're in the middle of those lean years. We're in the middle of those years. I think Loomis is one of the better general managers, player directors, however you want to phrase it, in the NFL. Very rarely are the Saints just flat out bad, roster-wise. This past year, was that our best year? Absolutely not. But we really weren't devoid of talent. As much as I've given grief to this past year, we could have easily won 10 games. Easily. The games I always point to, the double doink in Minnesota, the Steelers game where we absolutely no-showed, both Panthers games, either one of the Bucks games, the Bengals game, all those games were losses, and you can make a case that we should have won all of them, but if we won half of them, we're a 10-win team. So even the down years, even the lean years, the Saints have done a good job of kind of keeping a relevant roster intact.
And so, again, like, I'm not sure that I believe that every decision needs to be made at the Super Bowl. Like if Derek Carr is the difference between 7-10 or 10-7, which is very arguable. I'm not saying he is. But if he is the best quarterback available that you can get and he can push you to something like 10-7, is that not more enjoyable as a fan than another 7-10 year while you figure it out?
So my argument to that would be that Carr is a very minor short-term bump, but he hurts you long-term because you have to trade for him. You have to give compensation. So let's say you give up a third-round pick. That's not a pick you're going to have. Then you got to pay him $40 million a year. I understand that the salary cap in the NFL is monopoly money, but for a team that's so salary cap restricted and in such cap hell, to make a move like this for a 31-year-old quarterback you're paying $30 to $40 million a year seems backwards. This seems like a move you would make to win now. It doesn't seem like a move you would make to make the team fun or to make the team a 10-win team. If Derek Carr, and let me make this real clear, because I think it's my third or fourth video on Derek Carr. Obviously Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton. Obviously he makes your offense better. No one's denying that. What I'm saying is it's not so much better that it's worth $40 million a year. And, like I've made very clear, when you saddle yourself up with paying your quarterback that much money, you make it very difficult to make the rest of your team good, which is usually why when those quarterbacks get big deals, a la Russell Wilson, a la whoever, the rest of the team falls apart. The rest of the team has to go away. You can't keep signing players and giving big contracts to players who deserve it when you pay a quarterback that much money. So since we're not trying to win now, since we're trying to go from 7 wins to 10 wins, my thought process is don't do that and take that money you would invest in Carr and go invest it in 26, 27-year-old linemen, interior defensive linemen, linebackers, secondary people. Get that kind of stuff figured out, like Philadelphia did, and then we can figure out the quarterback thing once our foundation is a little bit better.
Now, maybe if you have a young rookie quarterback, it becomes exciting, but I don't know, Jake. I mean, how do you feel about that basic question? Like, does everything need to be made through a Super Bowl or bust mindset?
Somewhat, just because in the NFL it's different than college football. And by the way, I guess Katie was watching our show on YouTube on our TV in our room. I came back and I turned it on last night, and Scone and T popped up. I don't know I don't know if it just rolled right into it or whatever on the channel. And as soon as I turned the TV on, Matt has a big F-bomb. Memphis is right there. And he's like, Dad, who's this bad man with T-Bob? And I'm like, well, I thought people in leadership didn't use language like that. But
yep, we don't on the show.
That one to him, but y'all were talking about Derek Carr.
We're a family value show here. Boom, you could play this. You could play my shows at the dinner table. A lot of people reach out to me and they say, James, thank you for the videos. We sit down as a family every night and watch your videos. So I know I have the pressure of keeping a family oriented. I'm like Will Smith, basically.
A little bit there. It's one of those hard things because you want to be more competitive. You want to win more games. And I do understand what you're saying. Like, hey, go win 10 games, and that improves you, and that helps you get.
And it's a good product. It's fun for the fans.
It is, and you get some juice going, but like at what cost? And we're talking about dollars and cents here. Like, does he give you such an upgrade over what you currently have that you can justify how much money you're spending to give him? That's going to be the question.
Yeah, that is the big issue.
I do understand. Like, it is Super Bowl or bust because in college there's 133 FBS teams now with Sam Houston and Jacksonville State joining. So now there's 133. Of those 133, realistically, 12 have a chance. 12 teams have a chance to win the national championship, and that number might be high. It might be 8.
I was about to say, it's probably more narrow than 12.
You know what I mean? It's between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in the NFL, that number's much higher.
Definitely.
I don't think it is. I think everything's pretty much the same, actually. College football is a good way to look at it. The NBA is a good way to look at it, too. The NBA, there's only a certain amount of teams that can win the finals. No matter what their record is, no matter who's in first, no matter what the seeding is, no matter what the rosters are, you pretty much know, like, this team doesn't have superstars on it, they're not going to win, right? College football, that, like, going into this next season, we all know that Purdue is not going to be in the college football playoffs. I don't even know what Purdue's roster looks like, but I just know with the landscape of college football, you can go ahead and write Purdue, Minnesota, Nebraska, Vanderbilt, Kentucky. You can go ahead and write those schools off. You just can. Colorado State, just random middling teams. They just don't have the firepower, the star power to get there. NFL, next year, if everything is equal, you can go ahead and write off the Titans. You can go ahead and write off the Seahawks. You can go ahead and write off the, let's see, who else can we just flat out, the Steelers. You can go ahead and write off even good teams, even teams who are like, this team's kind of competitive. You can go ahead and write them off. The Colts, go ahead and throw them in the trash. Falcons, throw them in the trash. It's just, do you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league? That's it. I mean, it's crazy to say, but that's it in the NFL. If you are one of the teams who does not, you're kind of capped. So if you're one of those teams that does not, you have to figure out what you want to do until you get one. And for those teams like the Saints, I think it's perfectly fine if they're making decisions to win the division, to win 10 games, to be relevant. And I keep saying 10-win games or win 10 games. How about we just set a goal for Dennis Allen to finish over 500? Dennis Allen, this was his best year as a head coach. So instead of saying win the Super Bowl, win the division, go to the playoffs, win a playoff game, win 10 games, how about we just say, hey, Dennis Allen, go over 500. Hey, Pete Carmichael, call a consistent offense. Those should be the goals with this team. And that's why it's insane that we're even talking about the Super Bowl. The Saints, this is hard to hear, and I hate to say it. The Saints with Derek Carr next year cannot win the Super Bowl. They are not a Super Bowl level team. Cannot happen, will not be the end goal. No doubt about it. Will not be the goal. If you could bet, will the Saints win the Super Bowl with Derek Carr next year? Put your entire house, put everything you ever had, put the United States debt, put that on that. Because it cannot happen. Impossible. No way. You've got a coach who's never been over 500. You've got a quarterback who's never won a playoff game. You've got Pete Carmichael, who I'm not even sure his headset is plugged in. Why would they even be in the conversation? So let's lower that. Let's lower that a little bit. Let's set realistic goals. Now that shifts to Loomis, because the GM's job is to always be striving for that Super Bowl. The only question is, what's your timetable? For Loomis, if I was in his office, I would say within the next 5 years, I want us to be one of the 4 best teams in the NFC. I want us to be in the NFC Conference Championship conversation. I want to be one of the 4 tried and true best teams. That should be his goal within the next 5 years.
Definitely.
It is. And so because you play on somewhat of an even playing field, and you have a salary cap, and you can, in 1 year, you can draft a Joe Burrow and go from an awful organization to one that's competing for championships. Like, that can happen, right? So you have to have a little bit different mentality. So I do agree there, like, it has to kind of be that kind of mentality in the NFL. But I also can agree with you that it can be a step better this upcoming year, get some juices back into the crowd, get some life back into the crowd, because right now the Saints fan base wonders why the head coach is coming back, why there's been no changes on offense, what's your plan at quarterback, what's your plan with Michael Thomas, what's your plan for a lot of different things. So it would help some of that, and it helped change a narrative. Yeah. But again, what's the cost for that narrative, and is it worth what it's going to cost to sign Derek Carr, and is he that much better than, say, sticking with Andy Dalton, drafting a quarterback, developing that quarterback for 1 season before he takes over?
We are very much aligned here in our thinking. I mean, Jacob is basically saying what I'm saying, and I'm basically saying what he's saying, right? We're saying, like, look, yeah, he makes you better, but that's not the question. That's not the problem. Like, that has nothing to do with the transaction. What has to do with the transaction is that price tag and how that handicaps you moving forward, trying to get the rest of the team better. Like, to put the metaphor into, like, a house or something. If the whole house needs repairs, there's no reason in spending 90% of the budget in doing the den. You know, because it's like, yeah, you're going to have a sweet den, but the rest of the house needs fixing. You know, this house is not ready to be sold. This house is not ready to roll. Let's spread the wealth a little bit, bring up everything, and then then we can get a badass kitchen or something like that. Does anyone do metaphors like I do, ladies and gentlemen?
That is kind of the crux. Is he that much better than Andy Dalton? Like, does he bring you from 7-10 to 10-7? I think, look, Derek Carr actually has a lot of game-winning drives to his name over the years. And Andy Dalton, that's his biggest failure last year, is he had multiple opportunities to close out games and or win games at the end, and I think he did it once last season. So, like, I think there's an argument to be made that Derek Carr could be the difference between 7-10, 10-7, and I'm not really worried about the money. I feel like you could still develop a quarterback behind Carr if you really wanted to, but
it's kind of crazy. So in the last couple Derek Carr videos I've done, they've had a lot of views, a lot of engagement, and I've been going back and forth in the comments with people. And it's kind of crazy how they view Carr and view Dalton. Like some of the stuff that people throw out there, like the game-winning drives. I've heard a lot of people say Derek Carr has the most game-winning drives since like 2015 or whatever. But then you go and look at his records, and it's like 6-8, 7 wins, 4 wins, 6 wins, 3 wins. I mean, is every one of his wins a come from behind win? Is he just Ray Jing every single one of his wins just from behind the whole time? Like, is that what's going on? Because you hear all these things like, oh, he's got this, he's got this, and this. Like I had a guy in the comments say, Derek Carr has thrown for 4,000 yards the last 4 years, and then you look at the records of the last 4 years, and it's exactly what I just described: 6 wins, 4 wins, 3 wins, 8 wins. No playoff wins, nothing. Like the amount of cherry picking that I've seen with Carr this morning. I had someone say Andy Dalton took too many third down sacks, and Derek Carr wouldn't do that. One Google search: Derek Carr took more sacks than Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton had a better third down conversion percentage than Derek Carr. Oh, but the offensive line was bad for Carr. Nope. The Raiders actually had the 6th best pass protecting offensive line last year. The Saints had the 21st. I mean, the more I go down the rabbit hole of Derek Carr and Andy Dalton, it's crazy how similar their numbers are, or how much better Dalton is in certain stats. But just because it's Andy Dalton versus Derek Carr, and people think Derek Carr is this like sexy quarterback, this like big name sexy quarterback thing, I really don't understand it. I mean, he must have the best PR team in history for a guy who hasn't done nothing, for a guy who hasn't won nothing, for a guy who hasn't taken the Raiders. Like, it's crazy that we're thinking it's crazy that this video is titled "Can the Saints Be Title Contenders with Derek Carr?" when the Raiders haven't even been anything with Derek Carr. Why the hell would the Saints be title contenders if the Raiders were never title contenders? Oh, the Raiders' defense has been bad. Is the Saints' defense all of a sudden the 2000 Ravens? The Saints' defense is bad. The Saints' defense is average. The Saints were what, second to last in the NFL in turnovers forced? The Saints have an awful offensive line. I just said it, the 21st offensive line. Derek Carr took more sacks than Dalton behind the 6th best. Like, he's downgrading in multiple areas. If not downgrading, staying the exact same. So why the hell? Because that's another thing. People are asking, will Derek Carr be 3 wins better than Andy Dalton? Okay, so 10 wins. That means he'd be 4 wins better than the Raiders were last year. Is Derek Carr with the Saints 4 wins better than the Raiders team last year? Probably not. Andy Dalton, granted, the NFC South is a way worse division. No doubt about it. But Andy Dalton won more games than Derek Carr did last year. People are forgetting that. People are forgetting that the Saints had a better year than the Raiders. So why are Saints fans so all in on getting this guy? They're expecting him to do for the Saints what he could not do for the Raiders. And that's the realest thing you'll hear, so I'll say it again. Saints fans are expecting Derek Carr to do for the Saints what he was never able to do with the Raiders. And that's make them a winner. That's make them a consistent 10-win team. He just could not do it. Whether that was the defense's fault, whether that's the offensive line's fault, whether that's his receivers' faults, whether that's the running back's fault, I don't know. But when I tell you that Andy Dalton converted third downs better than Derek Carr last year, and then I remind you that Derek Carr had Devontae Adams and the NFL's leading rusher in Josh Jacobs. That's crazy. That's crazy that Andy Dalton was better on third downs. Because then you factor in that Kamara had probably the worst year of his career. Devontae Adams is obviously better than Chris Olave. So I mean, I don't know. I just think something. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills or something, because I'm seeing this stuff and I'm seeing these numbers, and it's like it's a Google search away, and it seems so obvious. And every single person besides me is saying cannot wait to scratch a check for $40 million for this guy.
I keep waffling. I'm back on Derek Carr. I was on Derek Carr yesterday morning. Last night I was kind of like, oh, you know what? I kind of understand the logic of building for the future, sticking with Dalton for now, blah, 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 blah. But again, what do you cost yourself in terms of how many bridges do you burn if you really run it back with Dalton and company? We'll see. We'll see. Are you going to draft it in Hooker? Who knows? Coming up next.
I also think it would help if GMs, I think it would help if Loomis, or just any GM, not just Loomis, but if any GM, imagine if Loomis held a press conference and he was like, look, we're running it back with Dalton. We don't feel like paying a quarterback $40 million. We're going to draft a quarterback and we're going to try and develop them, or we're going to build the rest of the team and go get a big guy next year. A little bit of transparency like that with kind of what they are trying to do may go a long way with the fan base. Because the problem with the Dennis Allen, Pete Carmichael, Andy Dalton, how they're saying that the fans would riot, the problem would be that the fans would assume that's just apathy. The fans would assume that, the front office doesn't care, they're not doing anything, so they're just running it back. But if they were told, look, we are doing things, we just have to do these things first, and then we can do whatever. I feel like the fans, if they were in the know and they knew Dalton or whatever is a bridge and this is the plan and we're looking for these quarterbacks or we're looking for this or whatever, I feel like they'd be okay with that. They would be fine with that because they would trust the process, as Joel Embiid would say. Let me know in the comments below, guys. What do you think? I can't believe I've even been asking it. Can the Saints be title contenders with Derek Carr? Can the Saints win 10 games with Derek Carr? Can the Saints go over 500 with Derek Carr? Can the Saints... What's the ceiling for the Saints with Derek Carr? You guys tell me. Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate you watching the video. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you in the next one.